I think it will. Yeah. Okay. So welcome to the researchers. They are actually from the center only, like from the Women's Studies discipline itself. So though an insider, as a resource person, I would welcome you for this panel discussion. What we thought of is we are studying theoretically various aspects of women and work, or women as a worker, all the either the worker conditions or what happens with their rights, and so many things associated with the women and a labor and a work sort of a thing. But when a researcher experiences on ground, actually those who are working women are there, and the researcher interviews them and tries to understand the various aspects of it, and to hear it from their mouth would be more beneficial and will give us a more information. So that's how we thought of having a discussion with three of such a researchers. I welcome Shreya, Daisy, and Sunita. All of them had worked on various areas, and on the basis of their research, partly on experiences, but mainly on their findings, they will be sharing today in their presentation. We are now in a digital area, and there have been a digital platforms on which we are working. And so the experiences of a gig workers have been studied by Shreya, and she will be talking about it. Sunita had worked on the tribal women's marginalization from livelihood rights in Saranda forest area, which is in Jharkhand. So she'll be talking about it. And Daisy has worked on the women's lives in the fishing port of urban Taluka in Navi, Mumbai. So these are the three various areas, I would say, of a work, and they would be talking about their research findings and about mainly with respect to this course of a woman and work. So let's hear them. So whichever sequence you would like to, we have no this thing. So whoever want to go first, we go that way. What we thought is let's have a presentation for about 15 to 20 minutes, which could be followed by the discussion. Either by for each presentation, we can have a discussion immediately after the presentation, and even in toto at the end of it. So we begin with the presentation. Whoever wants to go first. Who would go first?
Me, ma'am.
Sunita? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Once again, welcome to all of you.
Okay, thank you. Can I share my screen?
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot to tell Sheetal to make you host. So Sunita, Sangeeta, shall we make them host? Now still Sheetal is the host. Sheetal, make host, co-host three of them. Sunita, Shreya, and Daisy. Sheetal, can you hear me? She might be in the office, so may not be able to reply.
Madam, done. All are co-hosts now.
Thank you. Yeah, so Sunita, now you can share.
Okay. One second.
We are not able to see the screen, Sunita.
Yeah, just.
I thought you did it and we are not able to.
So, now it
yeah, now it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah, coming.
It hasn't come yet, but yeah, it has come now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's there.
Yeah. So, good morning, all of you. Dr. Sujata, Dr. Sangeeta, and my dear friends and master's students. So, this research is based on my MPhil dissertation. Basically, I am looking for the tribal women's livelihood right. So before discussing their livelihood pattern, their rights, first we know about the Saranda. So the Saranda forest area, mainly my research area was Saranda forest area. Saranda is known for the land of 700 hills, and it is known for the dense sal forest and Asia, and also for iron deposit. And the Saranda dense forest is the hilly region of West Singhu district of the Jharkhand state and known for its biodiversity, and it comprises reserve and protected forest. So mainly this area is tribal dominated area. Ho tribes is the largest group of tribes in this area, and some primitive tribes that's for the Bir Hor. They are also uh, still existing in this area. So the mainly in the Saranda forest, there are 42 revenue villages and 10 are the forest villages. So mainly the tribal women who are landless, they are engaged in collecting the forest produces for the subsistence, for their lives, and for the income generation also. So we can see the pictures of the Saranda, how women are engaged in their day-to-day life. So these are my objectives. What is the importance of non-timber forest? You can also say the minor forest produces in the tribal women's livelihood rights, and what factors threatening their livelihood rights, and now how they are engaged with this problem, the changing scenario of the Jharkhand. Now they are facing difficulties while collecting the forest produces. So my objectives are to find out the changes in the state economic policies and forest policies which impact women's livelihood rights. And study focuses on the centrality of minor forest produces in the lives of tribal women. What is the essential of the forest produces in their lives? This is my objectives, and this is the literature just which I studied. And the Forest Act, the colonial and the post-colonial Forest Acts, how that control or restrict the tribal women's rights who enter into the forest. So even the Indian Constitution, given the 5th Schedule Area Act, but how the state like play the violative role against the tribal women. So now the even the tribal women or the tribal people, they have the right to collect the forest produces in the scheduled area, but how the state allowing the corporates or mining actors to enter into those places. So this is my research methodology and feminist ethnography. So when the forest resources, how the Vandana Shiva says ki, it is women's work that protect and conserve nature and life in the forest. The mainly the tribal people associated with the forest. There are the different kinds because their philosophical or their religious faith that forest is their like god, goddess. This you can see, this is the sacred grove, how people are worship the nature. So these are my findings. My majority of the minor forest produce gatherers are women from very remote areas. Even they don't have the cultivated land, and even they don't know the what are the industrial use of forest produces. So, and second thing is due to low market connectivity, women are unable to sell their collection, whereas the middlemen or agents got maximum profits. And the barter system is still in the practice, how women are exchange their collectives on the lieu of rice, salt, oil, the little needs they fulfill through their collectives. And now the thing is that the Saranda forest area, there are the Usa Martin, Jindal, like many, we are not calling industry, the mining activities which are taking place in those places. So now the forest is shrinking. So women are facing the day-to-day life for collecting their forest produces. So now, and one thing is that without any value addition, they are unable to get the maximum price of their produces. Even the government don't provide any financial and technical support to the state. So they are facing this kind of problems. And apart from agriculture and MAP collection, now women are earning case income from doing wage labor, work in construction site, hand mining. So we can see that now that their livelihood is changing because the shrinking of forest, lacking of the minor forest produces, the survival. Now the question of the survival. For the survival, they are engaged in the other construction site work. Even the men, women are migrating to other places for searching the livelihood. This is the very like danger threats to this tribe, especially the primitive tribes. So, and while my data collection, there is the Jaraikela range, when I saw some women are demonstrated against the block office, because these places are the some forest mafia, they are illegal cutting their trees, the valuable trees. So women, definitely the tribals or mainly the women's livelihood rights is threatening. So they are demonstrated against this kind of illegal things in their areas. This is very good thing. So this is how women are demonstrated. And we can see the from 2001 to 2003, there are 7,009 hectares forest lost due to legal minings. How these places are destroyed by these mining activities, which directly impact their lives. Just I concluded, the tribal women in Saranda forest are facing two forms of patriarchy in additional patriarchy family structure. First is outside their society by middlemen, traders, contractors. Second, in the state, who restricted their mobility in the forest by passing different laws and acts. So,
yeah.
So these are okay. Thank you.
Shall we go with the all three presentation? Then we have a discussion.
How I stop?
I think that will be better, so we can go and even the time management will be better, no? So yeah. Shall I request either of you, Shreya or Daisy, whoever wants to go? Daisy?
I can go if it's okay.
Shreya, is that okay? Or respond from Shreya. Okay, let's go ahead with Daisy.
So I'll share my screen.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, how do I do a full screen?
Let it be, if it is not.
Just okay, just give me a minute.
Yeah,
Ma'am,
it
is
has
it
come.
visible?
Yeah, it has come.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you to Dr. Sujata and Dr. Sunita for inviting me to present my findings. So I will start. So this is my MPhil research, and my MPhil research is regarding mapping the trading history of women. And for that, I have taken the fishing ports of Uran Taluka. So Uran Taluka uh, is a taluka just near Mumbai, and it has had a long history of trade with Mumbai. So I was mapping a period of a broad period of 1920s to the current period, that is around 2017, that period. So in that, so for such a broad kind of data, I had divided my presentation, sorry, my data in various thematic parts. The first is what is the history and legacy? What is the history of the woman, and how did they come to come to find such a huge trading system in the area. Second is how the space and community. So how does the space and community affect the women who are trading? Then the third is the transformation of ports. So these are the women who are located mainly at the port areas around Mumbai. So how is the transformation and the coming of new ports, like the shipping ports, like say a JNPT, or all these kind of ports affected their systems of trading. The changes in economy, like post liberalization, what happened around 1950s 60s, post independence, what happened. So I have tried to also look at such kind of big changes where the government policy also changed, and how that came to affect women. So I've taken, I'm just quickly going through the methodology. I have taken two methodologies for this. First is like the oral history method, and I have taken oral history mainly from Purty and Paul Thompson. So they're saying that look at history not in like a big, in a big kind of zooming big way, but look at the everyday small things which are happening in women's lives, because the history lies in those small everyday routines and things. So that is what he says. So I've taken from that. And ethnographic method I've drawn and mainly from Nancy Shepherd Hughes, who has written Death Without Weeping. So she says that how when you are talking to women, how making of history should also be dialoguing with the woman, and not just you speak asking questions or women answering. So this is a very brief introduction. So I will, this is one of my first interview, a woman called Bindu. Now she belongs to the Koli community, and she has been a fish trader for almost 50 years or so. So she is telling me about her mother, like how she traveled from the ports of Uran to Mumbai to trade in the fish markets. So she says my mother, she would go to trade fish in Mumbai by Shidachi Hudi. So the boats are very prime, like a very important part of their life, because that's the only mode of transport that they use to travel for their work. And she says she's talking even about her grandmother. So she's saying that even her grandmother traveled, and and she's lamenting how that time the boats were very slow and we didn't know when our mothers went to trade, like when would they come back home. So she's saying how she traded almost for 60 years on that route. So this is basically the route. This is Mora village and Karanja. These are my two field areas. And the Princess Dock and Bhausa Dhakka in the Sasun Dock are where the women traded. So this is mainly the route that they took. So I'm asking my research questions are, so what were the history of such trading ports, and what was the role it played in the emergence of peripheral ports in Uran? What are the changing roles of women vis-a-vis changing patterns of economy? So how, when the policies changed, how the women work also changed? Then how did the social relations also started changing with the coming of a lot of new things, which I will explain later. So I'll go to my field experience. So two of the methodologies I explained earlier were also which I did not keep in mind beforehand, but something when I went to field, I realized that these are the things I should do, because when I went there, I found that it is not just one woman who is going to the market, it is her mother, it is a grandmother, it is her great grandmother. So lot of generation of women are like trading. So I changed my methodology accordingly. And also when you are documenting or trying to record history, like you will not get narratives which are very huge, or something which, like, like a book, like what you expect. You will get small narratives that, in my childhood this had happened, or in my this had happened. So from these narratives you should learn to, take things and, view them together to make a record. So that is what I sort of learned in things. And memory is also very static, like something you remember suddenly, but then you connect it to your present life. So it is like back and forth, back and forth. So this is how I mainly got my data. So it is what I think, people construction of their own history. So in this, I have tried to, through the narratives which I got, so I have chalked out, these are the periods which they feel that they thought a lot of transition came in their own lives. So 1920s, when women started trading to Mumbai, how did they find sources of fish? How did they find a transportation? Because that time there was hardly any transportation in that area other than boats. Then comes 1950s. This is the area, this is when they call Yantrikikaran Ala. So this is the mechanization area. This is when Pandit Nehru introduces mechanization in boats through their 5-year plans. So when this mechanization came for the boat, lot of things changed, because the speed of the boats became faster. The volume of fish started increasing. But it was also the time when a lot of subsidies were introduced in fishing, like for especially for boats. And when boat subsidies were introduced, lot of people ran to the money lenders to get money for the boats, to buy the boats. And what happened later was, during the 50s 60s era, lot of these boats did not make proper profit. Lot of them also sank because of some accident. So you'll, from 50s to 60s 70, you'll see lot of families who are going into debt. So this debt payment again fell on women. So after this 50s 80s period, lot of women entered fish trading, mainly because to pay the debt of their families, pay back the debt from the boats, which men, the men in the family bought. So a lot of them again like rejoined the trade. 80s was the period when a lot of private sector education, sorry, the private sector units started, like small companies came into that area, like Skoll came, then ONGC and all these also started coming. But women were still in the fishing trade. So women also lament the lack that we were still stuck in this trade, whereas there was good opportunity to join now to, that what they call office succumb, like we will go morning, come in the evening. We don't have to wake up early morning that. So okay, this is just my chapterization. I'll just skip all this. I'll just say like what are the major findings mainly. So one of the major finding was that because of the auctions which happen at Sasundok, I think a lot of people know that fish auctions take place. So this auctioning was one of the major transition point for women, because women earlier used to take fish from the men from the family who would go to the sea, catch it, and then sell. But when the auction system started, there was like a separation from the men, that they were no more dependent on the men of the family to buy fish, take fish, but they can independently just go to the auction and buy fish and sell it. So this time, this transition was very important, because this offered like a lot of independence for women to operate on her own. So this was one of the first things that started. Then so women not only became the traders of fish, but primary buyers of fish. So nowadays when you see that who is the main buyer of fish, it is no more the woman. Like till few decades back it was the woman. Now it is the big companies who are like buying in bulk, but till that time it was the women who were mainly buying. So the auctioneers had to, maintain good relations with the women. Now it's no more like that. Now the transition has happened. Another finding is also how the process of acquiring zaga also happens in a fish market. So when a fisherwoman is sitting in a market, the seat is usually like it comes from generations to generations to her. It is not that immediately someone gets it. Nowadays some people also get it, but generally they get it from their grandmothers, or like you can see in this how Rajni got a seat because her paternal grandmother was trading in Dongri market. Then her mother started trading, and when her mother stopped, that is when Rajni like got that seat. So this place in the market is very prized in the entire fishing community, because that is also like brings in stability to their profession. That is actually the main pillar of stability for the profession, is to have that seat in the market. And it only happens if generation after generation women have sat in that market and traded, only then you get it. And there are also cases now where women are also selling off the seat, because no woman in their family wants to trade. So that is also happening, but this still continues. And even BMC also, while giving out licenses, they also see like, since when are you sitting in the market, all these are also taken. So we'll just another thing also, how a lot of female are also primary earning members of the family, because the fishing community, uh, the earning by men is, it's very it's not on regular basis. So a lot of women are usually the primary earning members, and there's a lot of cycle of debt which is faced because of hello. Yeah, because of, I told you earlier how the debt cycle also goes on in the fishing community. It's basically an accident or whatever happens, and there is a bad debt which you have to pay because of the boat. Then again, a woman have to again enter the market. Also, child care. There's a huge care labor economy, which is also like a subset of the fishing economy itself. Because when a woman from a Kolivada going fishing, it is almost from my study area, almost 200 women used to go. So their children, like who would take care of their children, all these are also kind of points to wonder upon, like whom do they stay with. So a lot of reliance is there on their neighbors, relatives is there, but also the neighbors. So the immediate space of neighborhood is also such an important space for these women. Another thing is also how women understand their own work is, they think of their work as the hard labor, like which, like there's lack of sleep, lack of food, like you are tired all the time, because these women are waking up at 3:30 a.m. in the morning and coming home at by 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening. So they say how their work is this dhaupar and rushing. Dhaupar is like rushing in Marathi, and jivache hal, like how even in rainy season we have to go, we have to sleep in the rains in the boats. So, and but they contradict this kind of work with the work which is done today, which they say is the office kam. Like, so they want their children to go into the labor which is more, not the hard labor, but the kind of labor which is like the office work, where you have proper timings of work. Okay. So this is just a generation wise, how much is the, and they actually had a like a morcha 2-3 times to reduce the expense of the boat fare. So first generation, it took 5 paise, then 10 paise, and then second generation, how much it took. Third generation was again 12 rupees and 25. And towards the third generation, they started taking bus and taxi, because then they were a little educated, so they could, a lot of women say they could read the numbers of the buses, so then we could then take a bus to the market. So I've tried to map a lot of these things, and even up down of 10-20 rupees in this affects them a lot. So just even increase in the fare of a boat or a cab will affect them a lot. It affects their entire process of, because they're putting their daily money in buying the next day's fish. So if there's some this in the expense, like little more or little less, it will affect their daily earnings. So they're very much skeptic, like they're very much strict about how much they spend on, how much is their daily expenses. So that also they have to really be careful. Okay. So so there's also ma'am, yeah, I think I've passed 20 minutes, so I'll stop here. I have a lot of other findings also, but yeah,
Try to
just
wind up.
yeah. So I think now because of the mechanization which is happening like more and more, so I'll just show a map. I think this is how the port has completely changed. So all these are like new developments, the fish landing harbor, I think the Roro jetty which goes to Alibag, the sports and logistics. So all these constructions along the ports have completely like changed the lives of these people now, because there is, and a lot of, you can see here, there are a lot of like boat docking yards. These are yards which actually build fiber boats, and because of these fiber boats and a lot of new technology, a lot of like allied professions like carpenters, weavers, they're very old like communities in the areas. They are also now, they're losing out on their jobs. So yes. Yeah, so I think finally what I think the kind of philosophy which they live is like like they say you will find water in gold. Sorry, gold inside the water. Like what they mean is that once you go, you can maybe catch fish and become like lakpati overnight. So which is also true, but at the same time there's another strain of thought coming from women, that of stability, bringing in stability to the profession, that the future generation should also go into work which is more office oriented. So yeah, so last thing is like how I think there's a lot of how we see only labor, I think, but there's so much of knowledge inside all these laboring processes, like even where to get fish, where to the entire calculation, the I think the weather. I think there's so many knowledge practices also which are involved in this trading systems, I think, which we tend to ignore. So I've just tried my best to like bring out the nuances of how it works. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Daisy. We'll keep the questions after Shreya's presentation. Shreya, shall we go ahead?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I'm ready. Am I audible now, ma'am?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. 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 Hi, everyone. So I'm Shreya.
Your screen is also visible.
I'm Shreya. I did my master's in women's studies I was in 2018, 2020 batch. So I think now your campus will be opening again after that, because we left when finally the lockdown happened. So I'm glad that things are now opening up, because classroom space is one of the most memorable experiences that we have had. And we've been looking at others, our juniors, that they are not being able to kind of attend the classes, but all the best and good news that now campus is open. So I did my study on, so what happens is nowadays there are a lot of digital platforms, a lot of ride-hailing platforms, food delivery platforms, etc., etc. And these are largely being studied also to some extent, I would say. But my study, what it kind of brought in was, at that point of time, there were really, a big gap in the study of platforms. All the platform studies that were happening were they had an Uber bias, which is mostly the studies that were being done was on ride-hailing platforms, which is largely more male-dominated. For example, if you look at Swiggy now has some female delivery workers as well, but at that point of time, at least there were mostly males. And then, Uber, Ola, all these cabs also, they mostly had male workers. But there was one company, and it's called Urban Company nowadays, but earlier it was called Urban Clap. They largely started with providing beauty services online, and they started back in 2013 or 14. And their entire business model was based on just providing beauty services through platforms. Nowadays, they have expanded to other verticals as well, as now they have carpenters, plumbers, and a lot of other services. Even, there are two, I would always say that there are two kinds of gig work economies, parallelly kind of parallelly nikal ke aa rahe hain those industries. One is the high-end gig work, which is the office space and, freelancers. They basically set their own prices. So if you go on Urban Company ka platform, you can register yourself as maybe a lawyer or a teacher. For that, you can have your own sort of prices, that I would charge this much for these many hours of services. But the blue collar workers that are there on the platform, for them, they don't have that flexibility, the flexibility of, having their own sort of, that you see in otherwise also, like non-platformized. So what was happening earlier in the informal sector and the formal sector ka gap, it is actually percolating to the platform economy as well. It's not like platform economy is doing some kind of magic, and is kind of the narrative that they give is that, you know, we are kind of formalizing the economy. So beauty work and platform work, kind of the intersection was particularly interesting. One, because beauty work in itself is not studied as much. There have been some studies by feminist scholars, but if you think about all the different sectors that are being studied, still beauty work is kind of understudied, I would say. And beauty work involves a lot of, am I still available? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. Give me 1 minute. Yeah. So no, I was just saying, yeah. So beauty work involves a lot of emotional labor, as you know, even in small. So there are three kinds of spaces where beauty work is happening. One is the home becomes the space of giving those kind of services. So if you look in small cities, many women would go to, you know, other people's houses to give services to the clients. Then there is small salons, like I would say, on some streets there would be some salon, not very high end. And then there are these large luxury brands like Lakme and whatnot. So these kind of three areas where the sectors, I would not say sectors, but like the kind of the fragments in the beauty work is how it is happening, the beauty work. It is very gendered and feminized. I would say it is given by women, the service is given by women and for women. And a lot of, there is a lot of interesting work on the sociological space of a beauty parlor, how interactions happen, how it becomes an emotional and intimate space for women to share their experiences, share what is happening in their, even in their private spaces. So a lot of women would share their experiences of domestic violence at home with the service providers, etc. So a lot, this beauty work in itself is a very kind of intimated space. And my interest in this kind of work also came from my personal experiences, because my mother used to have a beauty parlor inside our home when I was a kid. So I had seen that kind of space where, you know, conversations are happening, and a lot of conversations are also about, you know, appeasing men in their lives, and how, you know, applying makeup or, you know, getting themselves like wax, etc., would kind of make their husbands happy, and all of that. So it's a very kind of complicated space. There have been some studies, the sociological studies, to understand the beauty work. So platform economy is kind of, what it is doing is exactly using technology to build a marketplace where buyers and sellers can meet and sell their products. So if you see Amazon, if you see Flipkart, what is happening? There are buyers and then there are sellers. Sellers can list themselves there, and then buyers can go in. So it's just a platform. It's called a market. So there are two kinds of models that are there. One is marketplace model, and the other is the inventory model. So most of these platforms are working on the marketplace model, wherein they just provide the platforms, set the terms and conditions, and then, you know, they get commission. The platforms, they get commission, and the buyers and sellers can meet. These are largely unsustainable business models. So a lot of companies, they are not even at the break even right now. Like even Urban Company at that point of time when I was doing my study, they did not break even. They were not profitable because because they're giving huge discounts to customers. So initially, and that's the problem that the beauty workers are facing. I don't know whether you know this, but I think last month and last month there have been strikes by Urban Company women in Gurgaon. So their Gurgaon office was blocked. The women kind of blocked them, and Urban Company has kind of taken legal action against them for protesting. So that is the latest update that we have. The idea is so these women who are part of the economy of the Urban Company platform, when they joined the platform, they were very excited that, you know, they would make 30 to 40,000 per month. They can, you know, decide their own time and their terms when they are working. They can manage major elephant in the room for most women is to manage both family and work. And they were like, this works for us, because if they go and work in a salon, they have to go at 10 and come back at 6. But here they were given that flexibility to kind of go anytime and, you know, do their work. But turns out that it is not the case, because these companies initially, so they get a lot of fundings from venture investors, angel investors, and they start giving, good salaries and start taking less income. And that has been the phenomenon with most of these companies like Swiggy, Amazon, etc. That earlier, when they want to get people on board, they give good salaries, but as and when they get a brand identity, as and when there is enough supply of labor, I would say, then what they do is they increase their share, and they reduce the share for these workers while keeping good discounts for the customers, because customers are going there just to get discounts. If you don't get discount on Swiggy, you will order from Zomato. That's how that's how the client psychology is built, the customer psychology is built. So, but interesting things happened. I will just talk about the voices from the platform, because there were a lot of themes that were emerging. One is these companies are also partnering with the governments on Make in India, and they have some MOUs signed, like Ayushman Bharat. I remember Urban Company had signed an MOU with Ayushman Bharat, saying that we'll be taking care of health for our workers, so insurance, and then providing loans. So they're also giving micro credits. And there are a lot of fintech companies now interested in partnering with these companies who have dedicated supply of laborers. The idea was, no one was earlier giving these people, I would say, loans, because the idea was that they would not be able to repay. But now, because these companies have a control over their income, so what they say is, okay, we'll give you the loan, and the company can give us back. So the company cuts the credit for them, and they can get easy loans. So it's a very complicated domain. If you ask me what is the business model for Urban Company, I would say I don't know, because they're playing the data game. They're selling data. They're not sharing data. Like when I reached out to them to share the data, because I wanted to understand how beauty work is kind of segmented with respect to caste, but the data was not available. They are not sharing that data, but they're selling that data to people who want to. For example, if Lakme goes to Urban Company and asks which product is being ordered massively, which kind of services which have our product are being offered, so they can then, that data is valuable for them, because then they can have that increase the production for that particular product. So all of that is happening. It's a very, very complicated domain to study, but it is important to still get voices out. It's very, very important now more than ever, because there have been strikes by Swiggy and Ola, Uber, but there have never been such penalization that has happened with the women workers from the Urban Company, because it's the first time that blue collar workers in the platform economy are kind of penalized for protesting. So, and that has always been the case. Whenever women come on street, it becomes a big deal. When there have been protests by men, it is still not, it is frowned upon. It is difficult to manage from by the company. They make a fuss about it, but then there is no penalization as such. And that's very peculiar to how women are kind of participating in this economy. So when I kind of had a word with them, these are the voices that I have kind of listed here, the voices of exploitation. And because one interesting thing that came out was also that these women have to go to the client's house, right? So when you're going to the client's house, you have to also keep in mind, and it's a reflex in most women, that what if I'm not safe in that house? So what are the company policies of workplace harassment, sexual harassment at workplace? Are they following that law? Do they keep that in mind while they're making any policies? But turns out there is no such policy. They've just said, they've just told these workers that if something happens, just run away, leave all the stuff there and just run away. So, I mean, I don't know what to even say about it. I mean, so all the stakeholders in this economy are kind of shifting their responsibility, be it employers or be it clients. There is no responsibility. Clients can behave as they want with the workers. For example, there have been discrimination against Muslim women who have try to provide services. Some women do not offer, do not book services from Muslim women. There have been some instances even in Zomato and Swiggy that people have declined to take food if it was a Muslim woman. So it's not, they don't have any such policies. They, I think day before yesterday, Urban Company partnered with Bala Project. Bala Project is the project that gives sensitization workshop on menstruation and health and hygiene. So they're doing all these kinds of workshopping and all of these things to build their brands. But when it comes to making better policies for their workers, there are none. To be honest, there are none. There are no policies. Client is the king, and the employer. And the most difficult thing is to understand who is the employer in this. Is the employer apt? Because app also determines a lot of things for women. The technology, women don't understand who is making these technologies. How are their credits getting cut? No one knows. So they just get a message, okay, this much has been deducted. They don't know for what. When they call the customer care, so they have one customer care number for all the grievances, and the customer care is mostly non-responsive, and whenever they kind of try to answer that, then also they say ki, okay, next time we'll take care, client ke saath to aisa karna hi padta hai, we have to respect the client. So it's very client focused, big discounts to the clients, but when it comes to workers, not really. And also one peculiar nature of setting up salons at home, it's an added work for women. If you go to the salon, there are good lighting, AC, music, all of that in that space, and the person can manage. There is a good chair, for doing eyebrows or threading. But at home, it is very difficult to create that environment, to create that atmosphere, because the beauty services are not just the physical services, but it's an experience that clients are paying for. That's what the idea is in everybody's head, that I'm paying for this experience. I want to get good massage, and there should be music in the background. But that is not possible inside the person's house, right? And so there is an extra burden on these women to give that kind of experience. And some of the things are not in their control. Sometimes the light is not good in the customer's house. Sometimes the chair is not suitable to do the threading or eyebrows, right? So all of these kinds of issues are something that are never talked about. The company calls these women as pro, which is professional. They're professionals, they're partners. And I'll talk about the next set of voices, which is about autonomy and flexibility and the whole neoliberal framework of entrepreneurship, that we are entrepreneurs, we are businesses. So a lot of women also told me in their narratives that they feel like unka koi boss nahi hai, they are their own boss. So that gives them some sort of flexibility, that gives them happiness. But on further digging, it came out that it's not like that. If you want to make money, you have to take at least 4 services in a day. And if you don't take services on weekends, you have to pay the penalty, which is, at that time, it was 1,000 rupees. Abhi now, because the women were on strike, it became 3,000. So they have to give 3,000 rupees if they are skipping the weekend. So if your child is sick, if you have a family emergency, whatever, they don't care. If you're not taking services on weekends, your credit is being cut, and you have to deposit some money in advance in your credit to the company, so that in case you are missing the work, they can cut so if you don't do the advance credit, you won't be getting any services and your account can be blocked. So what happens in the usual setup is that people get fired. Here you just get deleted from the application. They will just simply remove you from the application. You keep calling the customer care, what happened, and no one will even respond. So the whole narrative, if you see what the founders of this company are saying, they're saying that we are formalizing the informal work. But are they really doing that? And what does that mean? So these are the questions that kept emerging from the narratives. It was an exploratory kind of study at that point of time. I would suggest like more and more people should take the study forward. This was done in Mumbai. So I think a lot of studies are also coming up from Bangalore and Delhi as well. So it's very important because they're partnering with governments, etc. It's very important that governments put some pressure on these companies to at least share the data, so that people can study at least what is happening. Who are these people who are working? How many jobs have been lost during the pandemic, for example, and how many people have switched to these kind of platforms? How many women have switched to these kind of platforms for work? What is the overall macro level, political economy situation of this emerging platforms is really important to be studied from a feminist lens, because a lot is being studied, but the feminist lens in all of that is missing. Like, I haven't seen people arguing for better policies for women who are in the platform economy. So I would stop here. If you have any questions, I'm ready to take those up. It's a very broad kind of descriptive study, so I try to cover as much as possible, but feel free to ask questions. I would be happy to do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Shreya. Thank you, Sunita, Daisy, and Shreya, both the three of you. We'll open up for the questions. Any responses or any queries, questions from the students? If not, I'll begin with it and then we wait for the students to join in. Sunita, I was just thinking, you did mention some of the challenges that are faced by the fishing women. Like, one was the patriarchy, other was about the care work at home. What are the, like, that is true, but a more, I think, can you a little bit elaborate more on the challenges that are faced by them as a woman, as a gendered work as such? Sunita, are you there?
I think you are asking to question Daisy, na?
Sorry. Sorry, I named it wrongly. Sorry, Daisy. I was saying that you did speak, about some of the gendered problem, but can you elaborate more on that, since you had already spoken to those women? So,
Yeah. Actually, my presentation was too big and
that's okay,
a lot of
now you can
findings
elaborate
and
more on that.
it's narrative based. So a lot of these I had in my thesis, it's actually, I have mentioned all the narratives. So one thing is also like about the care work, and I think during pregnancies. So pregnancies, what women also told me was how they were working till late into the pregnancies, and this is also because how the state is also understanding their work. So if a woman is nowadays absent from her place in the fish market, they can cancel her license, because earlier what used to happen is that women have claimed that place through generations, and now because of what you call as so-called as formalization, which BMC brought in around 1956, this Purty system came, and later came the licensing system. So in order not to lose their licenses, a lot of women are working late into the pregnancies, and then after delivering, they're also joining it really fast. And again, negotiations with the state is also very because the participants from my area, there are a lot of what we call as nakwa sangatans, because the boat owner, the men who are the boat owners, but the women sangatans are more or less absent, and they are mainly dependent on the sangatans from like Mumbai. So whenever they want to negotiate, like a lot of the spaces when they sit in like rainy season, or there's a lot of dirt or water or anything they want to negotiate, there's nothing they can directly speak to. They just speak
What
to
about their protection if something goes wrong?
so that
Or a
is like
violence happens?
so see the thing is that from the narratives I got now, they see the market spaces as safe spaces. I think I forgot to read out one narrative. So one person told me she is recalling the Babri Masjid, the riots that happened in Bombay in 92-93. She was like, she's saying that even when the swords and knives were out on the road, we were still selling fish in the market. So she's saying that these spaces are safe spaces. So they don't see it that they have to adjust with it every day. They see it as our space. It's only because BMC has now formalized it. Now it has become like for everything they have to run to the BMC only. Also, just educated women, no? Like few of them are very educated, like they're graduate or they're 12th pass. So these women are very treasured in the market. Like she's our leader. So whenever I see a woman who is like little educated, they will go to her for the problems. Like she will what they call that patra liya aise, the writing letters. So I think the way we see markets is only space which are very, like unorganized, but it is not so. For them, it's an everyday space and it's a space in which they feel very familiar. There is one narrative from which I got where woman is saying that she was educated, but she could not join a company as a stenographer. And then she had to join the market. But she says that first I felt very, saddened that, women are just shouting here and there. And this is not how they taught us in school, workplace should be. But then she goes to say that this is my place, because I work identity built by their grandmothers and mothers so strong that ultimately kind of comes through that.
One more thing was, you said they generally spend rupees 295 per day. But how much do they earn comparatively? Do you have anything about it, like in general, how much they earn?
Most women told me that they earn around 1,000 per day at least.
Okay.
But there is no losses as such. But because of a lot of this cold storage and they pay for everything, the ice box and storing the fish and everything, they pay for it. So now the all losses are little less. Earlier they used to, the thing is the value of fish was not determined. How do you determine the value of how much a fish should cost? So earlier they would sell at any rate. It's only later on people come to know that this fish people like, so we should sell it at more. So even that valuation is very recent, and barter was followed till very recent stages in these areas. Yeah.
Sunita, can you also add a little bit more on the challenges faced as a gendered work for tribal women?
Yeah. So, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You are.
Mainly, we can see how the women who are engaged in collecting minor forest produces, mainly these activities are considered as an informal sector. So their work is devalued in the market economy and invisible in the domain of the Labor Regulation Act. So the challenges is a different kind of challenge they are facing. So one thing is that the women who lives in the remote villages, so there is the low mobility to reach to the marketplaces. Mainly the women come from by a foot, so they cover maybe 50-60 kilometers. Sometime what happened, they started come to the marketplace before one day before. So this kind of things. And what happened in the because of illiteracy and not knowing the value of their produces, they, and even that they don't have the bargain capacity, this kind of things they are facing in the marketplace. Yeah. So they that's why they don't get the fair price of their produces.
What about their protection?
Protection,
like in the sense, if something goes wrong, if they are in a market.
So a market,
How are
during my interview, some women are reported that they are very like verbal, non-verbal kind of sexual harassment they also face, but they sometimes they remain silent because they know that we are not that much of powerful. The businessmen or traders, they are the powerful people. We cannot go against them. If we go against them, then who will buy our product? So they remain silent, this kind of things. And one thing is that now their area, there are lots of mining activities are going on. So sometimes they are afraid of going into the mining site to collect the forest produce or plucking the leaves, because their male members are they reported that their male members are alcoholism. They are like uh, so all the burden come into their shoulders. So these are the very internal or maybe private or the public kind of problems. So
Okay. Students, anyone has any response? Shreya, there is Manisha and Muskan. Both of you have raised the hand that I can see. Manisha, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. My question, I have two questions. My first question is to Daisy. And she mentioned there was a slide where she mentioned about the spaces in the market and how it is passed on generation by generation. So I wanted to ask that what happens if there is a new entrant? What are the class dynamics involved, and how is the market structured by the women there? And my second question is to Shreya about how the new labor codes have affected these workers who are not recognized as workers, but what is their future? And is there a possibility to move towards worker-owned platforms? That's it. Thank you.
Daisy, to answer.
Hello. Yeah. So these spaces, most of these spaces are passed on from generation to generation, and these spaces are passed out in family. But in a lot of cases, also they will give it to their relatives or neighbors, or like if one space is empty, does anyone from the village want to trade? So these things are also there. But now the BMC has sort of refused to recognize this system, as in they will ask how long you've been trading, but other than that they don't recognize it beyond a point. Now only point of recognition is the license. Now if a one new person wants to trade, she can get a license and trade, but not everyone gets a license. Like there are cases from like I think a lot of newspaper reports are there where people from other communities are trying to enter the profession. So no one other than that, from outside the community kind of gets the license, because that will be a big problem that will create a, there's already a lot of politics also involved in it, because of Shiv Sena, who has also they've also like a lot of women I think go along with them, because they say that how they have worked for the women and organizing the women. So all that is also there. But a new and nowadays what is happening, the newer generation does not necessarily want to come in the profession, and even the women don't want to come. And the cases where the places in the markets are getting sold off, like a lot of women, old women are like selling off their places to other women. But outside a network, no one can, I think outside that network no one can enter inside the market. I think that kind of unspoken rule still remains. And if at all you don't have a zaga from your family, a woman sit outside the market, that is also there. So there's always some way to mend or bend the rule around it. So how bylaws.
Shreya.
Yeah.
Shreya.
Yeah. So I think the first question I'm forgetting. The second part of the question I remember about how can this be make participatory and democratic, the platforms. I can answer that, but usse pehle I think first part I'm missing. Can you repeat again?
It was about the new labor codes that have been brought up by the government.
Yeah. So new labor codes now recognize gig economy workers as an occupational category. So just the recognition now has come after a lot of time. Earlier also, I think in 2017 or 18, there were some codes that were released by the government. Usme bhi they had recognized it, but nothing really happened. What after the recognition? What's the next step? But now we have new labor codes coming in. So there, at least gig economy worker is a separate category. But then, even government, I think, is very confused how to, because it's a very, some people are calling them as micro entrepreneurs, some are calling them as partners, some are like, no, these are blue collar workers only. So it is a very challenging thing, and a lot of good examples coming in from, if you see California, and they now have minimum wages for gig economy workers. They have insurances for gig economy workers. So that came in with a lot of movement and pressure on the government. But now it has actually and it is just one of the states in US. There are 49 others, so nothing there as much. The second question, I would say there are some platform cooperatives coming up, and it's kind of a global movement called platform cooperativism, if you look at it. So the idea is the platforms owned, run by the women, even technology in the hands of women. How will that happen, right? That's a larger question. And, with these platforms, the major game for them is marketing. How much they spend on their marketing and promotions to nudge the users. So for example, if you say now there are Big Basket and Grofers, now it's called Blinkit, but that image has to be there inside the customers for these to be sustainable. I think in India, Seva Bharat is partnering with a global platform cooperative. There is also a kit prepared by, I'm forgetting the name, but there is a platform cooperativism kit that was made by someone, I think in Google or somewhere, which kind of tried to tell people how you can make your own cooperative on running a platform. I think Seva Bharat has partnered with something like that. Their next 2-year plan is that to build an alternative urban company wherein women can, democratically, because technology and the algorithm, they are not democratic right now, but how to make them democratic and participatory is a bigger question. But Seva Bharat is doing something in that regard. Yeah.
Thank you, Daisy and Shreya. Muskan?
My question is for Shreya. I think parts of it were answered with what Manisha had asked, but I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the policy recommendations to tackle the challenges that you had mentioned. And by policy, I mean both the company and the government policies.
Yeah, so that's a very good question. I think so how do companies make better policies? I think there is a lot of pressure group kind of activism required. For example, currently, if urban company women were protesting, if there were more pressures on by the civil society, by the government, on the company, then they would not do such a thing. How are companies like public sector companies like and there are struggles there as well, but at least in formal work, how have we kind of achieved where we are, at least in the formal work? How do we have policies like sexual harassment at workplace? So I think it would be interesting to look at those histories of movement and pressure groups, both nationally and internationally. How did that work? I think the similar kind of strategy would also work in this case, given that urban company is also now a global company. It has moved to Dubai and I think in Singapore as well, they're present. So one is the pressure. And the second is, I think the state has to play a big role here. Because the thing is, when it comes to welfare of informal sector workers, who makes policies for them? The policy makers, right? The government. Kitna wo implement hota hai ground pe, that's another level. That's another thing. We can go in detail about that ki kahan pe kitne sare gaps hai. Even when agar aap direct benefit transfer dekhte ho, to kitna ho raha hai aur kitna claim ho raha hai. That's a different thing. But who is making those? I think governments are making. I think government needs to put some kind of regulations on.
Shreya, we lost.
I think both public and private policies need to come in.
Yeah. Any other question? All the responses, if not the questions. Shreya, I was just thinking how much would be like the, I'm not saying the exact numbers or thing, but percentage wise, if you say comparatively, how many women do they take part in this digital platform, like of a beauty parlor that you had studied?
The company has given some data. I don't know, maybe abhi update ho gaya hoga. But there were at that point of time, there is enough. Like in Mumbai itself, there were more than 15 to 20,000. So there are it's a lot of in-demand thing. A lot of workers are trying to join. Even during the COVID times, like especially beauty work suffered a lot because, social distancing.
Who are these women generally?
Mostly, if I talk about their educational background, mostly were 10th pass. Then in terms of their, I would say the income level, I would say the family income was around 20 to 30,000 per month. So I would not, this was the category of, and I tried to look at whether these women were migrants, because a lot of migration is also happening nowadays to get work in these platforms. And that's also another area of study that should be happening, Abhi. How is the migration kind of taking turn in terms of this kind of economy. But the interviews that I took at that point of time, most women were born and raised in Mumbai. So, yeah.
Sunita, you want to add anything?
Shreya, will you just tell us the caste location of the gig economy workers?
Yeah. That's what I was trying to say, ma'am. When I did my study, I reached out to the company to get a sense of, social location of women who are working. Are they collecting any such data? Because workers told me that there were some forms in which they had asked about their caste categories like SC, ST, and general. But the company didn't share anything. And when I tried asking, it was a very difficult question, in fact, to ask from the participants. And to be honest, I didn't have much idea about for example, if they were saying I belong to this particular name of caste, and if I used to look that up on internet, what is this? Because if I'm asking them as SC, ST in general, they are like, I don't know. At that point of time, we just filled the form, I don't know. And I just interviewed 8 people for the study, right? And within that, I think I covered it in my final presentation also. Four of these women said that, yeah, we belong to general category, but the other 4, what they named as their, for example, they would say, I'm a Marwadi woman. And some of the, surnames, when I looked up on the internet, it differ from, state to state, their category. So I didn't quite understand that. But in general, if I speak about beauty work, one study was done in Pune, I think, wherein they tried to understand how, if this kind of labor is, based on caste, and they couldn't find much. There is a mix of both. So for some women, they would say, this is, I mean, the thing is, it's very difficult to understand anyway this kind of work, the beauty work. Some would say, no one asks my caste when I go and provide services. But some would even say, like, I think Vibhuti ma'am discussed this at that point of time, that some would say we would want services only from a general category. So the thing is, the markers, like, they're very much visible for Muslim women. They're not visible for example, say Dalit women, or how to differentiate. And for example, now with dress coming in, it's a very homogeneous kind of setting, right? But yeah, there were some instances where, they were asked not to wear Mangal Sutra or burqa. There is a lot of debate going on these days, hijab, but these companies are not allowing women to wear hijab when they're going to the office. And the guards would, abhi to schools, but the guards would at that point of time also would not allow women from urban company to wear hijab and then enter, because they have to show and prove that they are an urban company person to enter that apartment. And so the markers are not visible as such. So it's a very complicated event, but I really tried, and I would encourage all of you to ask for that data from these companies, because they are collecting the data. And that would give us a lot of insights about how beauty work is segmented with respect to caste. Because itne bade level ka data abhi tak nahi hai, but now it has become easier with these companies coming up because they are anyway collecting. So
Yeah.
Thank you, Shreya.
Anyone else? Otherwise, we'll move towards winding up. It seems there are no questions. So I thank on behalf of both of us and even from the behalf of a class to all three of you, Daisy, Shreya and Sunita, for being here and sharing your own findings of a study. And I think it has really like helped the students to visualize, from actually what could be on the ground for those workers in those fields. So I think it was very helpful, and yeah, it was insightful also. So the response in the chat for being, it was a good sharing, and thanks to three of you for being here. And yeah, though you are from the inside of our center, as a formality, I think we both should thank you for being here, giving a time and sharing your research as such. So thanks again, and I end here, and hope that we will meet again in the future and our communication continues.
yes,
Thank you.
thank you so much.
Thank you, all of you.
Thank you.
Bye.
I think Sangeeta, you are host, so I can't end the meeting for all.
Okay.
And stop recording also. I think